Hey, Andy.
Good evening, Edgar.
Again, how do I correct my spelling on my name?
Hover over your tile, and on the top right, there's
Oh,
three
up at the
dots.
top. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Evening, everyone.
Evening, Jane.
Hi.
How's everybody's Father's Day?
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I barbecued and I have to pat myself on the back.
Ah,
Girl was good.
Are you a father?
Oh, shoot, yeah. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and we
Ooh,
come in the third great.
whoa. You're not showing your age.
Well, in my family, we're running out of boys.
was or is?
Well, not in my family. We had the last 3 births, all girls.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, I don't have a father anymore, and I'm not married, so I don't have children.
Well, if you're nice to me, I'll let you have a couple of mine.
Yeah,
I
my
do
dad's still around, but he's gonna be 93 this year.
Great.
Oh, wow. I'm impressed.
Wow.
Well, you ain't kidding. You're impressed. I'm impressed that you still have him.
Yeah, that's
Oh, that's a long
why
life.
that's why I claim I'm gonna live to 120.
Oh.
Think you should, Andy.
His dad was born in the 1890s and lived to 90, so I figured I should get like 30 years on top of that. So
Yeah. Phew, that's a long life.
I know usually when I say that, everybody's like, "Oh my God, why? Why not?"
Yeah.
My father lived till 90, and I was thinking about going for 150. But
Ooh,
I
well,
think I might, yeah, I think 120 might be enough.
Right.
yeah, 150 might be stretching it. I think I've seen doing some sciencey stuff and saying they anticipate about 110 is kind of the max, but we've got people exceeding that already.
Hey,
My grandma is 104, and she's still walking around, getting around. So
great.
104. Wow.
Yeah, that's me. That's what I'm shooting for. As long as I'm still mobile and
There you go.
can see.
You sit there or here.
That's the bigger issue for my father is he's starting to lose his sight in his remaining eye.
Well, technology is pretty amazing. You never know what it can achieve with it within the next, with AI. Who knows what's going to happen?
Well, yeah, it could get to be kind of like the Matrix where you can get a little data port put in the back of your head, and plug in more data. I believe there's I always felt like by the time I was 80 that science would be advanced enough that they could take some of your cells, clone you, and start growing a body with just a brain stem.
Right.
And then, when the body gets to be about 20, they can take your brain and transplant it into the new brainless body.
Yeah, you just want to live forever, don't you?
I do. I do.
Oh, it looks like just me and Gleam,
Well,
unless there's another.
blame it on a book by Robert Heinlein.
Good old Mr. Heinlein.
Yeah, yeah. Methuselah's Children.
Well, just think about how boring you'd be your great and your great great greats and the great greats.
Yeah. Well, there's a character in that book who winds up being a recurring character in a number of his other books, who lives so long that he can't remember all of his past, and he keeps referencing this book that supposedly he wrote at some point
Mhm.
in the past, but he doesn't remember writing the book, and it's all this good wisdom to live by. Right.
Which
So
book was that, Andy?
I'm sorry, Mercedes, what?
What book was that you're referring to?
The first one's called Methuselah's Children.
Uh-huh.
Let me see if I can tell you what the other one is. I kept pages from the old paperback. Here's some of the words of wisdom. I don't know what book this is because it's not on the pages. Being generous is inborn. Being altruistic is a learned perversity. No resemblance. It is impossible for a man to love his wife wholeheartedly without loving all women somewhat. I suppose that the converse must be true of women. So he's not making a blunt statement that other women, but that women feel that way, but you live and learn, or you don't live long.
I like that.
Mhm.
All right, we've still got people joining us. Let's give just a couple more minutes.
Right, 25.
Lazarus Long is the character's name. I got that much. In Methuselah's Children, his name is Woodrow Wilson Lazarus Long.
Okay, I'll make a note.
No. They give Heinlein gives him credit for creating the League of Nations. That's like one of the few Heinlein books that was based in like the present day, Methuselah's Children, and then after that, he starts going off into the future. All right, chat.
Hey, Andy, do you see Officer Galvin or Halima in the waiting room?
I do not.
Maybe they're working off of a different link. Give me 1 second.
And I have to apologize. Seems people in here are among those that were spammed. I followed a link to an invitation and tried to sign in using Yahoo, and I couldn't sign into it. And because I entered my password, guess what? They got into my emails then and sent invitations to everybody else. So if you can't open the invitation, good. Don't enter any password to try and get into it. So I'm sorry that it got out there. I'm sorry I was stupid enough. It was one of those weird things where someone I knew through community activism sent me an invitation to something, and it was like, oh, I just literally saw this person for the first time in a year at the grocery store, and I thought that might be an actual thing, and I was wrong. Steve.
So, I want to ask, Andy, I tried to join this invitation through my email and put my password in, but nothing happened.
Change your password, and you're going to start getting text messages from all your friends. Hey, what's this invitation?
Oh my gosh, yeah, you should send something out. There's a lot of people that might not be at this meeting that got it.
Yeah,
That's
I will.
scary.
Yeah,
Wow.
if you guys done it, change your password as fast as possible after this meeting.
If you did that, if you followed that link and clicked on it, then yes, that's my advice.
Looks like
Yeah,
we-
I don't know, but this is, I was gonna just say, I don't know if this is an issue also, but it said Tuesday the 19th, so maybe people are thinking it might be tomorrow too.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know I
I,
saw
I went with the Tuesday, which I was correct, but just saying.
because it does also say in the very first sentence that our meeting is on the third Tuesday, like it always is. So
I
That
was
was
not
the-
aware of that, but
that,
Thank
that
you.
was my mistake. And if what Steve's referring to, what I'm referring to, came from my personal email, it did not come from the Mid-City Neighbors email.
Yep. Sure, yeah.
So it looked like I hadn't changed my password in about 10 years, so I was due. All right, we are at 6:37 and we got a big crowd here today. Let's go ahead and start with our NRO meeting. There's Halima.
Hello, and Officer Galvan, and we have Officer Navarro in here as well.
Yeah.
So first, I want to apologize to you. We actually have our Community Academy graduation happening now, and I completely forgot to get the stats for you. So I don't have a report ready, and I apologize. I'll have something put together, and I can send it to you by Thursday, because also tomorrow's a holiday. So it's been a little bit of a crazy week already. But we are here for any questions you may have. It looks like you have quite a lot of people on here today, so I'm sure you guys may have some questions for us.
So Mouse, you were the first to raise your hand.
It's
And
not a question.
real quick, Mouse, before you do that, let me announce to everybody, the easiest way for me to be able to keep track of people raising their hands, there's going to be so many people, I can't see everybody on screen, so I'm not going to see that you're raising your hand. You're going to need to go down and hover over the reactions down there, and you'll see, if you click on reactions at the bottom, you'll see a bar that says raise hand. And when you do that, for me, it puts you in the top of the order on the screen, so I can keep track of who raised their hand first. So go ahead, Mouse. Thank you.
It was just a suggestion, maybe since you guys are setting up at Make Music Day this Friday, if anyone has any questions and you bring a report with you, then are you able to do that? Are you going to be present Friday at the event?
Yeah, we'll be there, and we can bring a report with us then.
Great.
Great suggestion and great reminder to everybody that our Make Music a Day event is this Friday from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Colorado Center Park, 26th and Broadway. So it's going to be free music. And there will be a taco truck, and we are going to be raffling prizes off to the people that sign up and become members.
We'll also have a lot of freebies and swag to give out too. So it'll be a fun-filled event.
And reminder to everybody that unless you mute yourself, we can hear what you're saying to people in the room next to you. So please be mindful of that. Are there any other questions for our resource officers? It does not seem like it. See if I have any.
Sorry,
Jim,
I have one. I couldn't get
See
myself.
what
on.
it says there?
Go
Leave
ahead, Al.
meeting.
Well,
Yeah,
I should.
today I had an opportunity to flag down 3 of the bicycle police in downtown near the library to point out to them some tweakers who were hidden over at 625 Arizona. You might know that location. It has a small little area, alcove along 7th Street, where the homeless hang out frequently. And they went immediately over. They sort of said, "Oh, thank you," and they immediately went over and engaged with the people. And I, continued walking on. I didn't want to stop and make myself notice to these people. But I was just wondering, what is the procedure? Because because they can't throw them in a squad car. They're on bicycles. What is the procedure when they find people actively using drugs? Because these guys were actively smoking up and stinking up the place, and it was more than marijuana.
Right. So it would be, if they had a reason to make an arrest, they would make an arrest. And yes, they're on bicycles, but we have 15 or 20 other officers driving around the city in patrol cars. So they would just call a couple, 1 or 2 units to help assist with the transport, and they would transport the individuals to the jail for them because they're on bikes. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty simple. It's just like calling an Uber. You call one of your friends and you come pick them up, take them to the jail, and then they ride their bikes into the station, finish the booking process, and write the report, and the rest goes from there. Okay,
and is actively using smoking pipes. Is that something that they would bother with in the arrest? Or
It's
one fellow looked in really bad shape.
Right. So they could. I don't know what the circumstances were. I don't know if they were arrested or not, but they could. It's a misdemeanor, possession of narcotics. Yeah. So yeah, they could be arrested, or they could be issued a citation there on the scene and released without being brought to the jail. It's up to the officer's discretion.
Yeah, they were so far gone out of it. I don't even know if they would be able to give their names to the officers. So is there a way that I can follow up to see a crime statistic report that I could see?
With what happened with them?
Yeah. At what time, like if an arrest had been made at that time? At that location?
I can look at the call history, and you said it's 625 Arizona?
Yeah, that's the address. They were actually on 7th Street.
Okay.
The back of the building.
Called dispatch, did you give 625 Arizona as the location?
No, I just waved them down. I waved the bicycle guy down, and they came right over when they saw me waving my hand, and I explained what was happening.
About what time was it?
Oh, I was at the library about 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock today. Okay.
Yeah, because I walked over and there was nobody there. I walked in the library, picked up my book, walked out, and they had crap all over the sidewalk. So it was like within 10 minutes.
Okay, so we'll look. We can use location or the time being 1 o'clock, and we can let you know on Friday if you're
okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Laura Lee, I saw you had your hand up.
Oh, I was just going to ask for some anecdotal information from my friends on what's going on in the neighborhood from their point of view.
You want some crime stats?
Well, no, you don't have the crime stats today. I'll settle for anecdotal information.
How
are things going?
Well,
crime, summer.
So crime goes in waves. So right now, crime overall is down. Violent crime is down. The part that's up is thefts and larcenies, like shoplifting, vehicle theft, vehicle burglaries. That's up, but that's not just Santa Monica. That's county, statewide. So that's why we remind everyone to lock their doors, lock their cars, make sure their cars are empty. Don't leave any bags. Don't leave anything in your car, because it just takes a second to smash the window and steal your backpack, which you left in the back seat. Keep your doors and your windows locked to your house. Lock your bikes. lock your bikes to bike rack. Don't use a cable lock, because I can go to Home Depot and buy gardening shears and I can cut your cable lock in about 5 seconds. But yeah, but everything's fine. Everything's good. It's not as bad as it's portrayed to be in the media. So.
And we've also started some additional summer patrols. So we have more saturation in the downtown area as well as on the beach. So we're just getting to calls faster because of that. So, but things are going well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Mercedes. You have to unmute yourself there. Thank you.
Sure. I wanted to respond to Laurelie's question. I have asked the police before how do you handle somebody who's homeless and looking like they're in real need of help. And they said, if they're laying down on the ground, you can call 911 and they'll send somebody out. But if they're just walking around, there's no option to do anything, apparently. So does that sound right to you, officers?
So homelessness on just the pure level of somebody being homeless is not a crime. We will not vilify somebody who's homeless. It's not a crime. It's not against the law to be homeless. It's not against the law to be mentally ill. Homelessness is a complex societal issue. So strictly somebody homeless is not a crime. We would address it through resources. If you see somebody who is in need, you call dispatch. You could call 8458-8491. You could call 911, whatever. If you feel it's an emergency, you will call 911. We're going to get the resources to the individual, or we're going to get the individual to the resources. The city has a 4-pillar approach to addressing homelessness. Our officers know what the 4-pillar approach is, and we address it as the situation plays out. So there's the therapeutic transport van. We have a signed contract with the Salvation Army that has it's called the HMST, Homeless Multidisciplinary Street Team. They will come out and they will address the issue. So there's many ways, but somebody strictly homeless is just a person walking down the street. We will get them resources if you guys call, and we will get the officers to them. We'll offer them resources. We'll offer them, we'll see if it's called being service connected. We'll see if they're connected to People Concerned, St. Joseph Center, Salvation Army. But it all starts with the community and the police working together to address the issue. But again, somebody homeless is not a crime. We can't arrest somebody for that.
Yeah, hello.
Right. So then to finish up my question,
Hello.
apparently I did get the wrong answer then, because I was told that if they're walking around, they can't do anything. But if they're laying down, they can call, they can send out somebody to do something. So maybe I didn't phrase the question right when I called. So if somebody's walking around, like a lady I saw at Broadway and Lincoln, she had a cart with all kinds of bags. And I said, I think I asked her if she's homeless, and she goes, I need a job. And I said, why don't you go to St. Joseph Center? They get people jobs and homes. But I didn't call anybody because I didn't know, because that's all I can do. You guys can.
And I don't, Mercedes, I don't want to kind of beat the horse dead here. Couple of points of clarification. Laura Lee used to work in communications for the police department. So when she said she's reaching out to her friends, that is kind of what she was referencing. These officers know her and she worked with them. But again, with homelessness, Officer Galvan gave a pretty lucid response, and I saw that Stephanie had her hand raised. So if you have a question, Stephanie? I'd like to hear it for the officers.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I live over on 14th. Just a quick question in regards to, we've had a lot of homeless people come through here in the alleyway on 14th between Santa Monica Boulevard and Arizona. And numerous calls about homeless people going through trash, throwing the trash cans down. In fact, we had I think you guys know him. He's naked and he goes through the trash, piles of trash up everywhere. And I've got to tell you, we've all called, but nothing seems to happen. He just gets to walk around and do this. And I thought it was a ticket actually to go through people's trash cans and litter everywhere. So I just wonder why it's a different form of, if I did that, I would get a ticket, correct? But
Absolutely. Well, if you knocked over some trash, you wouldn't get a ticket. But this person you're talking about, there's a lot of things that we can do. Them traveling through the alley, no crime there. But when they start knocking over trash cans, when they start putting trash in the alley, if they're naked and decent exposure, there's so many different crimes there. And I'll give you just a couple of different things. And I think my partner mentioned a couple. You want to call our dispatch. You want to get our patrol person down there. You want to document that incident number when they get out there. I'm not sure if my partner mentioned the help team. It's a team of officers that work exclusively with the homeless. They probably know who the person is. I'm sure they do. And they can do outreach and they can also do enforcement. They also travel with a clinician. Our patrol personnel also travel with a clinician, a mental health clinician, where there's services available to them. So that's just a little bit of the many things that we can do. The transport van that my partner brought up. In addition to, just on a side note, the county does offer, if you look up LA HOP, it's social workers that'll come out and do outreach entirely, not enforcement. But that's on an additional thing. But in terms of the police department, there's a lot that we can do. If this is a continuous problem with this one person, reach out to Officer Galvin, reach out to me. If it's affecting you and your neighbors, what we've been very successful in is getting neighborhood buildings together, having a neighborhood watch so that everybody does a collective effort to be able to report, take enforcement, and then take long-term action. We talk about restraining orders, different things like that. So there's a lot that's available for us to do and for you to do as neighbors to take a collective effort to make this thing stop. So please, if you don't have our number, we can put it in the chat, reach out to us. We'll make that, especially if it's a recurring issue, we'll make that stop.
okay, thank you. Hasn't stopped yet, but hopefully it will.
I'll put our information in the chat, and I'm not sure if you already have it, but please reach out to us.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, Michael, before I let you go, I'm getting messages, so I just want to respond to them because I don't have really the ability to read and type and do everything else. Some people have joined recently and don't seem to be getting the emails. Please make sure to add info@midcityneighbors.org as a contact. We know that sometimes these go into spam filters, so that should help. I'm pretty sure as people join that Mouse has been adding them to our general info list, which is what we send them out to. But I will try to see if we can sort that out because a number of people told me they didn't get this, even though I was fairly certain that they were in there. So Mouse, if you could type our email address in so people could get it into their list. So, and then it looks like Officer Navarro added in their phone numbers as well. So go ahead, Michael. Michael, you're muted, Michael, so. I'm gonna lower your hand because you seem to have
Can I
disappeared.
make a comment about our email, please, really
Yes,
quick?
please. Yeah.
info@midcityneighbors.org is a board email and it's not personalized to any one person to the board. So if you could just make sure you keep it Mid-City Neighbors in your contacts or MCN under your contacts, then it avoids confusion when, if in case I don't get to forward it to the right board member. And so unless you have our personal emails, make sure you address info@midcityneighbors.org as Mid-City Neighbors. That's it.
Thank you. Because yes, Mouse is actually the one who checks those and then forwards them on to the rest of us, or me specifically when it's addressed to me. All right. Seeing any other specific questions for our officers? I only have one of the guest panel online yet. I'm anticipating in the next 5 minutes they will show up. But what we could do, Theresa, thank you for joining us again. If you maybe want to go ahead and give your history as the Vice Chair of the Housing Commission. That would be a way to get us going. And then at hopefully at 7, we will have our other panelists with us and we can proceed.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for inviting housing commissioners. My personal history, I've originally from Colorado and I moved to California 12 years ago and moved to Santa Monica in March of 2014. And I'm a mom of 5 adult children and moved here with 3 of my kids. And I joined the Housing Commission because I attended meetings for a very long time and felt like not enough was being done for a specific population, the Santa Monica Housing Authority program participants in particular. So I applied for the seat as a Housing Authority program participant who was formerly homeless. And that is the seat that I am currently in. It's a 2-year seat and was appointed in December of 2021 and joined the commission in January of 2022 and shortly thereafter became the vice chair. So that is my current position and history in Santa Monica and the Housing Commission.
All right. Thank you for that. For everyone else here, I'll just give a brief, quick history. Oh, there we're getting, Gleam is joining us just now. Santa Monica Mid-City Neighbors is the neighborhood association. The community neighborhood organization is the way the city refers to us. There are 7 of them in the city. Our territory is from the south side of Colorado to the north side of Wilshire, Centinela to the west side of Lincoln. So we literally are straight down the middle of the city. We are a good blend of single family housing and we have a lot of apartment housing, condo units, etc. in our territory. We do meet once a month, 3rd Tuesdays. That was designed to not conflict with city council meetings that are typically 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. Occasionally we have problems with that. They have to redo their meetings or they have special meetings, but usually it's a pretty open night compared to other meetings. I did attend recently. We had a brief discussion at our last meeting about the the projects that are going in from the Hollywood Community Neighborhood. Hollywood Community Housing Corporation, and I attended their Zoom meeting, and I didn't ask to speak until the very end, and they ran out of time for me to give comments. But at that meeting, some people noticed me, reached out to me personally, and wanted to see if we could arrange something where they could express their concerns to the powers that be, as it were. And I did reach out to the Housing Commission, which is why Theresa is here. I anticipated we would have Peter Borison and Gail Gordon joining us. And I also reached out to Gleam Davis. Now, typically, we do receive money from the city. As part of receiving that money, we have to agree to not side with any particular candidate or show any preference to any particular candidate. And that, generally speaking, means unless I'm having them rotate through our meetings, that I usually don't have them join us for our meetings as we're approaching an election, so as not to show any type of favoritism. The neighborhood council, which is the 7 groups, are going to put together a forum for all of the city council candidates, at which point we could ask them questions and grill them and do various things. As we get closer to when that time is, it's probably going to happen in September, October. We will make an announcement. We will send out information about it. So I did ask Gleam, because Gleam is the only sitting council member who has announced that she is not running for re-election. And she is also the longest serving city council member currently on the Santa Monica City Council. So I'm thankful that she agreed to join us. And I think that we might start. Theresa, do you know if we are anticipating Peter or Gail to join us?
I didn't hear, I thought that Commissioner Borison was going to be here, but I don't think that Commissioner Gordon
Okay.
could make it this evening.
Okay. Well, that being said, hi Gleam, thank you. I see you turned on your camera. I'm a little not sure. I didn't really have a big overarching plan on this. I thought maybe between Gleam and Theresa, you could give us a little history of how we came about selecting these lots. It seemed like a lot of concerns of the residents were, well, there were numerous, but one was the loss of the parking that supports the businesses. And then the other is having the formerly homeless right in our residential neighborhoods, which, well, I'm personally not sure where else you're supposed to put them, but those seem to be the overarching concerns. And if maybe we could get a 10 or 15-minute rundown of that, that would leave us at least 45 minutes to start fielding concerns from the neighbors. And I will mention that the neighbors are sending out a petition. They have a petition drive. If you have a link to that drive, if you want to post it in the chat, you're more than welcome to. As a board later, we will discuss whether or not we want to send it out to our email list. That being said, Gleam, do you want to maybe
I mean, I can start out giving you maybe a little history about how we settled on these spots and where we are procedurally as well. I think a lot of people on this call are involved, and so they probably know that we adopted a housing element, and that housing element was certified by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. Because that housing element has been certified, we're not subject to penalties such as the builder's remedy or the penalty that they are experiencing currently in Beverly Hills, where you cannot even remodel your bathroom because there are no remodeling or other permits to be issued unless and until, as long as there are housing permits in the queue. But our housing element is effectively, you can view it as a contract or a promise, whatever word you want to use, a promise to HCD that we will not necessarily build the housing. The city is not required to build the housing. We are obligated to create the environment and pass the zoning rules that will allow others, whether they're nonprofits or for-profit builders, to build the housing. Our housing element promises to build a significant number of amounts of housing. We're required to build approximately 9,000 units, of which approximately 2/3 need to be deed restricted for people below certain incomes. And it's broken down very low income, moderate income, that sort of thing. But we all know that one of the things that makes housing very difficult to build is the cost of land, particularly affordable housing. If we want to make the housing affordable, asking nonprofit affordable housing developers to purchase land, which is very expensive in Santa Monica and on the west side generally, makes it very difficult for them to make a project economically viable. So what we did in our housing element was commit that parcels owned by the city of Santa Monica would be used to develop 100% affordable housing, deed restricted affordable housing. And these 3 parcels that are at issue, not on Wilshire, but behind businesses on Wilshire, were part of that promise. So we are committed to building deed restricted affordable housing on those parcels. What we did was an RFP, and we put it out to a number of affordable housing providers. They responded with their proposals. And we got, it was reviewed by city staff and a judging committee. And ultimately, we selected HCHC, Hollywood Community Housing Corp., I think is what it stands for, which for those of you who are familiar with our local nonprofit houser, CCSM, Sarah Letts, who is currently the head of HCHC, used to be the head of Community Corps here in Santa Monica. So she's very familiar with Santa Monica. So we, as a council, accepted the recommendation of staff to enter into what's called an exclusive negotiating agreement with HCHC. So that is where we are now. We are in the negotiation phase with HCHC to come to an agreement for them to build housing on the 3 parcels. Now, their response to the request for proposal laid out what they intend to build, and I'm gathering, I don't have a visual, I apologize, but it is 3 separate parcels. All parcels will be deed restricted affordable. One of the parcels will include housing that we call permanent supportive housing, which is housing for formerly homeless persons. That includes not just housing, but wraparound services, whether it's drug counseling, mental health counseling. We actually have, in fact, Santa Monica's been on the forefront of developing permanent supportive housing. If you've ever heard of the nonprofit Step Up on Second, which builds permanent supportive housing, it's called Step Up on Second because they were founded here in Santa Monica on 2nd Street. And they have several permanent supportive housing buildings in downtown Santa Monica. And I will tell you, if you talk to Todd Lipka, who runs it, and he's actually expanding nationwide now, it's been so successful, so now he's Step Up America. But he's always happy to give tours of their facilities, and I suspect these facilities will look very similar. The people concerned are the group with whom HCHC will be contracting to provide these wraparound services. And this permanent supportive housing, it varies varies, but has on average over a 90% retention rate, meaning that of the formerly homeless persons who move into these buildings, over 90% of them are there typically after 1 or 2 years, meaning that it's a successful endeavor. It does really get people off the street. They don't get housed for a week and then leave. And in part, it's because of the services being provided. So that's where we are now. The city is negotiating with HCHC, even perhaps not even as we speak, but they are in the process of doing that. The one thing that I know is of concern to people is HCHC will be building some housing, building parking for the folks who are intended to occupy these buildings. But they obviously are replacing parking lots. The way we finance housing in California and the United States is perhaps suboptimal, at least in my mind. And one of the things they cannot do with the tax credits and other financing mechanisms that they'll be using to build this housing is build publicly available parking. So if the city wants to see some publicly available parking at one of the sites, the estimate is that it will probably cost approximately $5 million out of the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund to build that parking. So that is all being negotiated right now, so at some point there will be an agreement reached, we hope, and at that point staff will return and the council will vote to basically enter into the agreement with HCHC to build this housing. So that's sort of the status of where it is, why these lots were singled out. And I want to make it clear they were singled out because they were public land, public parking lots. They're not the only lots that have been singled out. Just to give you some context, the Bergamot Air Station was also promised to build several hundred units of affordable housing in the housing element. The parking lots that border Nielsen, between Main and Nielsen, which are also public lots, are part of that package of land that can be used to build affordable housing. So, and obviously 4th and 5th in Arizona, and we are already moving forward with looking for someone to work with the parking lot by the end of the Expo Terminus, and then upslope of that, the building that the city owns. So this is not the only spot in town that is being looked at for this type of housing. There are city-owned land throughout the city that's will be used for this. So that's sort of the status of where it is. It's why we are doing this, is because we are obligated to under the housing element. And should we renege on that obligation, there could be consequences, as I mentioned, whether they're builders remedy projects or the kind of remedies you're seeing in Beverly Hills and Huntington Beach, where basically their local control has been eviscerated because they are non-compliant with the provisions of their housing element, or they don't even have a housing element. So wanting to stay in HCD's good graces, we're moving forward. So I think that's the short story. I'm sure Theresa, perhaps from Housing Commission, has a little different perspective, and then I'm just, sort of happy to answer any questions that people have.
All right, Theresa, do you have anything to add to that? Otherwise, I will start taking questions.
So this was all decided, the decision about where the sites were before my time on the Housing Commission. We were approached by HCHC, the Housing Commission was approached in February, and they came and they gave us a presentation basically asking the Housing Commission to make a recommendation that alongside city staff, that city council choose HCHC for this development. They did go over a little bit about the sites, but mostly they only came to present about the development team. Some of the key things that the Housing Commission stated and recommended, because it's my understanding this is already a done deal as, Councilmember, Davis has explained. This was a part of the housing element. So, you know, what we basically were recommending is that some of these, units, or at least one of the buildings, be considered for affordable home ownership. Currently, the Housing Commission has been trying to push the city towards affordable home ownership to try to stabilize, you know, people in the community, and to give them permanent affordable housing. It did not seem like HCHC had the immediate capacity, but they did say that they would look into it, did talk about Heritage Partners in Pasadena, who has affordable home ownership program there. And they seem to be somewhat open to it, but of course, you know, this is just one meeting that we had. My understanding is they're going to give a final presentation to City Council sometime in 2025. And as far as their proposal for their final development plan, that would also include the supportive services. The Housing Commission did talk about their concerns about the people concerned, even though they have been the premier homeless provider in Santa Monica. Many of us have concerns about them because of complaints from clients there on a regular basis over the years. The fact that it appeared that there was some problem during the audit of homeless services, and the audit subcommittee being able to get a clear assessment of, I guess it was over $1 million where this money was spent, or how it was used. And the fact that they seem to have a monopoly on all of the supportive services programs in the city. So those were the two main recommendations that we had. We also talked about, and the Housing Commission in general, with all new housing that is being built, especially 100% affordable housing, because also many of us on the Housing Commission think that it should be more inclusionary housing and less 100% affordable housing. We feel like it is a form of redlining and segregation, continued segregation in the city by, you know, putting all low-income people in one building in one neighborhood. Now, it's been the Pico neighborhood primarily, but it seems like, you know, this is just on the other side of the Pico neighborhood, so it's still in the general vicinity. And I did see the flyer that was sent out from Mid-City Neighbors, and I do understand what the concerns are, but what I would say is, you know, if these buildings have to be built, then in my opinion, what would be best is for any neighborhood groups who have concerns about these buildings to be more involved in the process and ensuring that the community outreach is being done, which is part of HCHC's proposal, that there's going to be robust community outreach. So I would just suggest that anyone who has concerns, anytime that there's an opportunity to give input, that you have, you know, one or two people there to represent the community's concerns and to also have them answer questions. But in general, I feel like these buildings are, in comparison to some of the housing element projects, these buildings are fairly decent in the sense of they're not super huge. I understand that, you know, it's still, they're still taller, somewhat taller than the other buildings in the neighborhood. But my personal opinion is at least they're not 12 stories high. And as far as the concerns about, severely mentally ill people being housed there, they have to be housed somewhere. And Santa Monica does have a population of people who have mental health needs. And I would agree with Gleam Davis that the sense that these programs have been relatively successful. I know of several people in Step Up who were long-term homeless, more than 10 years homeless, and they've been successfully housed for at least 8 years that I know of, who have severe mental health problems and also were, former substance abusers, and they voluntarily are in Step Up, and they're in private housing and maintaining their housing for at least 8 years and without any, big, huge problems, because the people with Step Up do work very hard with their clients. So that's the input that I have. Again, all of this was decided before my time on that housing commission, but I would just again say that people in the community should definitely, any opportunity that you have to give input or ask questions of these 100% affordable projects, I would say to be very active and involved, and submit both written comments and attend meetings, and that's it.
All right, thank you, Theresa. And I will say that one of the other concerns that was expressed by the neighbors was the lack of notification. There was one sign in a parking lot, and there was probably a sign in the others. They say they did not receive the mailer that the HCHC claims that they sent out. I will point out that the city's policy for developments is to send out those mailers to a 500-foot radius, and HCHC claims to have sent it to a 750-foot radius. Still far short of what I would consider appropriate as a quarter mile, or even at least 1,000 feet, but that is neither here nor there. So Demo, Dima, my apologies.
Dima,
Your
yes.
hand up for a while. Go ahead and
yes, thank you. Thank you, Gleam and Theresa, for joining us, and really appreciate the background. Listen, I think fundamentally we actually do want to understand how do we get involved, given that we understand the development of these buildings is going to happen for the reasons that I think you stated, but we also understand that there's a room to optimize services, and some of them may be design elements by working with the community. And that's really the fundamentally what at least some of us on the call are looking for. How do we engage in a way that it is a constructive dialogue, that we're being heard at least? Because some of the questions, some of the points, and I don't want to bring them up because they would go down, bulletized questions. Hey, is there a risk of for example, mentally ill patient? Fantastic. Yes, we acknowledge. What can we do as a city? Can we ask HCHC, for example, to provide 24/7 security on the perimeter? Is there going to be a response groups? For different risks, there's the mitigation tactics, I guess, and that's what we kind of wanted to get into. We wanted to discuss. There's also a number of issues being raised, of course, about the credibility of HCHC, and as you said, people concerned, but that's right now floating in the community. I'm not going to raise them. That's a part of the process of engagement. We want to talk through, we wanted to sort out what's true, what's not true, and what's true we wanted to mitigate. So that's really our fundamental question. What's the best way to engage? We were frustrated to learn, Andy, as you said, at the very last minute. I saw broken sign, broken by exactly individual, but that who we're gonna build the house for. It was broken in half and hanging off the lot. And it took a neighbor's like, hey guys, did you see this? To send it around. And then some people raised their hand. Oh yeah, I think I got it. So there's definitely hit and miss, but we live in a building right between. So we're gonna have on the back, we're gonna have the Euclid building, and right in front, we're gonna have a 14, and we didn't get it. So I'm not sure where HCHC. And then a lot of us attended the meeting, and it felt everyone came out that it was a marketing organized push to sell. All the way to the point that I've heard people texting me because we were out of town. People texting me like, I swear there's a planted people who are cheering and lauding. I don't know. I'm just passing it along. But the taste, the emotions in the community, this is not authentic. For some reason, everyone is puzzled why HCHC is doing it, and they're not doing a great job. Looks like they ducked the bullet on a lot of questions about security, what's going to be done to help, to essentially to help protect the rest of the neighborhood for potential outbreaks in the for mentally ill. There was completely ducked that question. And it also felt like HCHC were essentially pointing the fingers back at the city, acting like a contractor. So I understand it's kind of like an interesting dichotomy. They've been asked to lead the process, but at the same time, they're acting as purely as a subcontractor. We're not responsible for anything. Go bother the city. So we're all confused, but we all wanted to provide a feedback to find a constructive, pragmatic resolution that we can all live with. This particular, I mean, a lot of parts, and as you said, the Mid Wilshire is very unique. A lot of people here for a long time. We personally been here for 30 years, almost 28 years. 2 daughters grew up through Samo High. Everyone that we talked to in the neighborhood, long time, either renter or owner, right? This is not your young, kind of like a transient renters who come in for a year, enjoy the beach, and then move back to somewhere else. This is a stable community that just wanted to continue staying safe. We understand what needs to be done. We just want to continue staying safe, and we want to engage. So just help us how to engage. Help us through the process. I'm done.
All right, thank you for all of that. Kind of gives an example of the concerns that were raised at the meetings. And, again, let me point out that the purpose of those meetings is for them to get feedback so they can improve their plans, okay? It's not a complete done deal yet. That's part of the reason for those meetings. And there will be 2 more meetings in July, another in person and another on Zoom. I've posted their website in the chat, as well as their contact website page. And they have a page there that says when the next meetings are. Ellen, you've been patient. You are up. And you are muted, so.
Here I am. I have Ellen Hannon, and I know Gleam very well. Gleam, I have a few questions. One is Step Up is also being investigated for financial fraud. You said some very nice things about them, but the state of California says they have not accounted for multiple millions of dollars in their financial. I agree with Theresa, everything she said about the people's concerns. There are some lovely people working there, but they're not very good administrators, is what I found, and there have been numerous problems from that location. And I've asked David Martin this question: how did the city obtain the rights to 1217 Euclid? It's been an empty lot for years since Kelly Olson would not allow that building on Wilshire. He said it's an A lot. The city agreed. No one was allowed to build there. And all of a sudden now the city owns the property. And why hasn't the city done something with it before? And right now it's a pigsty. It's got garbage all over it and just tall grass up to my waist. So that's another question that I have. Do you know, Gleam, how the city got the rights to that property?
Well, let me interject real quick, because Ellen, I went back and looked at all the information I had when we were discussing the A lot previously. This one was not an A lot. It's not on the list that went around among the neighborhood groups. So
It was an A lot. It was an A lot. That's why they couldn't build it there.
That's the 12th Street lot.
yeah,
That's, yeah, 12,
That's 12th
17.
Street behind where they were gonna build the Trader Joe's and no one wanted it. So that one is on 12th Street. That's not on the list.
yeah,
No,
it
that's
was.
not it. That's not it. That's not the one.
Well, I'm
No,
just.
this is the one, this is the one behind the Fidelity Building that
That's
Kelly
12th Street.
Olson,
That's
that Kelly
12th,
Olson kept it.
Yep, that's
Kelly
12th.
Olson kept it as a residential lot. It had to be a residential lot, but it had a private owner. So how did the city did they buy it? Did he give up and just walk away because it's been a mess for the neighborhood for years? And I don't know if Gleam knows the answer to that, or if she could find the answer to that for us.
City owns the lots that HCHC is going to build on. It has to own the lots because that's part of the deal is we are, effectively leasing to HCHC for, de minimis amounts of money.
Right, but
So,
when and how, because when we did the loose, it was not listed as a city-owned property.
yeah, and well, yeah, and the loose
So
goes
since
back
then,
quite a way.
I keep watching the city, website, and each month when you buy things, when you go into executive session to buy and stuff. So I was just wondering, how did we get control of that very valuable piece of property? And, or can we sell it to someone else and make money and then maybe build somewhere else? Because it's an extremely valuable piece of property. That's my one question.
Ellen,
no one has never answered.
Ellen, I can try and find out how we own the property. So that's number one. We own the property. How long we've owned it or how we got ownership of it, I have no idea. But two, we're not going to sell it. We're going to build housing on it. We promised HCD that we would do that. And the second we start reneging on these promises to HCD, if you guys are worried about 6 and 8 story buildings, wait till you see 20-story buildings remedy projects. So
that's another question
what we're trying to avoid.
I'm talking about this project right now. I'm going to stick to those. And I would like to know how and when the city and how much they paid for it and how they've got it away from that developer. That's my one question. And it's been on since you've been on the council. So you should know the answer to that question. And then the other thing, my question I have is the effect of the businesses along Wilshire. We're looking like the South Bronx from Santa Monica Hospital down to like 11th Street. Everything is empty. The stores are empty. They can't come back with no parking. The other side of the block doesn't look that bad on Wilshire. We've got homeless. It's a mess. So what is the city going to do to help the property owners along Wilshire? What can you do to energize new stores coming in there, especially with no parking coming in? Our marijuana place, I think, is gone for sure.
Well, let me say one thing. I said that the city and HCHC are negotiating whether or not the city should pay an additional $5 million to build parking. I don't know how those negotiations are going to end because they're still negotiating. HCHC is out there getting information. I think the meetings are July 8th and July 10th. And they will go on in the process. So there may well be at least some replacement parking. In terms of, you said there were homeless people on the street. Well, this is one of the ways we're going to get homeless people off the streets is by building housing that they can move into. It's another way we're going to keep people from becoming homeless on the streets is by building deed restricted affordable housing so that people can afford to live here and not lose their housing for economic reasons. So, I'm sympathetic. And in terms of the business development, that's, a little bit beyond the scope of this meeting. And I didn't really, pay much attention. I know we're all struggling. We're all trying to focus on economic development throughout the city. But from our perspective, really, we want, one of the ways we're going to address the problem of homelessness is by removing people from our streets and putting them in homes. And we know that's difficult, and that's why we're not just giving them, or, we're not giving them anything, why we're not putting them in just housing. We are also giving them wraparound services, which we know is an effective way to keep formerly homeless people housed.
And why was our neighborhood given the priority of being the first ones and not Main Street and not the other neighborhoods? Why were we chosen first?
I'm not sure you were chosen first. I think actually downtown was chosen first. We've already begun figuring out what we're going to do with what we call the remnant parcel, the parking lot near 4th and Colorado, and the upslope building that the city owns there, as well as we took down
Have
the
those
parking
properties
structure.
are they moved along as far as we have? And the one on Main Street, where are they at?
Well, the ones on Main Street, we've not yet put out the RFPs for, because there are some issues there. The Coastal Commission has to be consulted. That's within the coastal zone. So we need to talk to Coastal about that.
And also, Ellen, the former parking garage downtown has already started their process because they came and spoke to us about it already.
Right,
So
yeah, but they're not
not
making any
necessarily that we're
progress.
first. And Ellen, I think Laura
Okay,
Lee
so
has
other
pointed
people
out,
can go on. Go ahead.
Laura Lee has pointed out the empty lot you keep talking about is not one of these lots. All of these lots are parking lots, existing
No,
parking.
1217 is an empty vacant lot.
That's
not a parking lot.
1217, Ellen, that's 1217 12th Street. The project is on 1217 Euclid.
1217 Euclid, yes, it's behind
Yes.
the Fidelity Building.
No, that's 12th Street. So,
No, that's
yes.
Euclid.
So,
That's Euclid.
No, Ellen, Euclid and Wilshire has a La Monarca, and behind that is a parking lot. There's a hairdresser, there's a 310 tutor, there's a Wilshire Theater, there's a parking lot behind there. It's 1217 Euclid, and that's part of these three proposals.
No, that's 13th. I mean, that's not, that's,
I live here. I'm
oh,
right.
I'm sorry.
Ellen,
I can see it out
Ellen,
my window.
I'm showing you Google Maps right now.
Mhm.
Here's the big empty lot that
Mhm.
you're talking about. That is 12th Street. Here is Euclid. This is the spot where this project is going to be. This is not part of
12th
this
Street, okay.
conversation.
So it's this one? This little tiny one up here?
Yes,
And then the next one is the one up on the other side of 14. Okay.
yeah. So
And a
you're
third
talking
one
about a
is-
completely different property that is not part of this process.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
So,
But is the 12th Street property also owned by the city?
no,
Well,
that
we
is the
just heard it
point.
might be.
That's why there's confusion. So I was trying to clear up the confusion. So Laura Lee, you've been patiently waiting. Go ahead, please.
I want to just say that, I was hoping that we would hear from Councilmember Davis that they might have moved the meeting for July. I know that you and I had talked about that, and I was hopeful that the Monday after a holiday wasn't when HCHC was going to try to have another meeting. But I did want to thank you for being here, Gleam, and for helping us spread good information.
And I did ask about whether or not the July 8th meeting could be moved, and the city manager went back to HCHC, and apparently they were not able to move it because they had already, they felt, gotten the date out in the community, and they thought that moving it might cause some confusion and actually reduce attendance. So they didn't want to move the date. But we did ask about it. I did ask about it, and the city manager asked HCHC about it.
Well, maybe they need to have a subsequent meeting then, because that meeting date is not really out there. We haven't received anything in the mail, so it's not been publicized at all. And there won't be a great attendance, and we probably need more, which is really our point in general, is that there's a total lack of engagement and lack of community process that preceded this RFP. And I think that's where the city is lacking, right? These affordable housing projects that we are not standing in the way of is a change in the city, that we're going to be developing these 24 parcels. So knowing we're going to develop 24 parcels in all these different neighborhoods, shouldn't we have a process that engages the community, that asks for input, before the RFP process is completed and makes us feel like we're just being questioned about what color to paint the building, because that's the way HCHC has made us feel. They did not make us feel like they were truly engaged with us. Nobody seems to have walked the neighborhood. People don't know the scope of this neighborhood, the width of the streets, how it's going to tolerate a building of this size, more than triple the size of any building on this residential street, with no parking for the public, which will affect everybody and every business. I mean, there's been nobody in the planning or housing or HCHC office that's looks like they are fluent in what's going on out here. They're planning from their offices, and they're not taking the consideration of the existing neighborhood into effect. We're doing it at the airport. We did it at Memorial Park. We did it when we wanted to think about the Civic. We engaged the community. Why are we not engaging the community in advance?
I'm not, when you say, I mean, they are having these meetings. I understand you don't like the date. They've had one, and if it's a notice issue, that's something we can certainly address with them. I mean, there's still some time to notice it. That's something we can address. You know, I'm not sure a meeting that talks about all the 24 parcels throughout the city could be all that productive, in all honesty, because you know what's happening or potentially going to happen out at Bergamot Station versus what's happening on 4th Street, which is what's happening in Ocean Park. While I think there may be some shared concerns, I think there are also different concerns among the various neighborhoods.
I'm not saying one meeting for all of them. I'm saying that as we enter into a new era where the city is now becoming a developer.
No, we're not developing anything. HCHC is the developer.
Okay, well, we're giving land to a developer to develop on our city land, taking away assets of the city that are parking assets that help support the neighborhoods and the businesses. As we do this in each neighborhood that is affected by these 24 developments, don't we think in a city where we engage everybody about everything, that this isn't an important enough issue to engage each little community before we enter into an RFP that decides that we need homeless supportive housing with wraparound services like on 2nd Street in the middle of a neighborhood versus a senior housing unit to house our seniors that are falling through the cracks, who actually wouldn't need cars, which would free up parking. I mean, there's nobody looking at the whole big picture.
Theresa has had her hand raised for quite a bit of time here. I think she wants to address some of your concerns. Go ahead, Theresa.
I just wanted to say too, I mean, obviously, Laura Lee has pointed out that there are several sites spread out across the city. So it's not just one neighborhood being targeted. And I do understand, and I'm hearing everything that people are saying about their neighborhood and the fear of disruption to their neighborhood. But I'm also hearing everyone saying that the presence of homeless people in the neighborhood just wandering around is a disruption. And so it just seems to me like the logical thing to do is to house people and give them the services that they need, so they're not wandering around the city, where they can be better assessed if they have severe mental health issues, where they can be better assessed and treated. It is people who are untreated that seem to cause the disruption, so to speak, in the neighborhoods. I mean, someone wandering around naked in the neighborhood is a problem, obviously, and especially near a school. So, you know, obviously this person needs services. This person may not even be someone that would be eligible for a unit, because that person's mental health issues may need some other type of setting before they even get there. But to be fair, the majority of this housing, only 40 units are permanent supportive housing. The rest of these units are for seniors, disabled, large families, small families, individuals, and people who are Santa Monicans who have been waiting for affordable housing or are being pushed out of the housing that they're in right now. Again, I'm not a huge fan of 100% affordable housing, but to be fair and to be real about it, and through all the time that I've been in Santa Monica, what I have realized is that the Pico neighborhood is the neighborhood that's been inundated with 100% affordable housing. To include, HCD has said no more affordable housing can be built in the Pico corridor. There's an actual map in the AHPP that shows where no more affordable housing should be built. Whether or not these sites land within that framework of that map, I'm not exactly sure. I haven't looked at that. I would encourage all of you to review the AHPP or the Affordable Housing Production Program guidelines. Again, I would say that one way or another, people are going to have to be housed, whether it be in Santa Monica or Los Angeles or Venice or Redondo Beach. You know, everyone is having this issue and this problem, and it's not just Santa Monica, it's not just California, it's the entire nation. We are having an affordable housing crisis. There are people who are making less than 30% of the area median income who cannot afford market rate housing. And the reality is most of the housing in Southern California is market rate and luxury housing. There is a small amount of affordable housing and not enough for the people that it needs to support. So again, I understand everybody's concerns, and I think it is a problem that there is not enough notification. To include, the Housing Commission was only approached as giving recommendations on the development team, and we were basically told the team was already set up. There wasn't going to be any changes, like when we recommended somebody other than the people concerned. So I agree with all of you that you feel like you're just being told how it's going to happen, and you're being asked what color things are going to be.
Mhm.
But
Thank you, Theresa.
yeah,
I'm going
again,
to.
I would just say be more active and voice your concerns, and especially to City Council. Each and every one of you could be writing in public comments to City Council saying you want this meeting to be rescheduled and for greater notification to go out. Have a mailer go out, not just posting on a sign somewhere.
Well, no, so I'm gonna jump in here. So, because there's a lot of stuff that's been said and is going on. So they supposedly did send out a mailer. Now, as far as dates goes, again, they've established those. They've decided they're not going to change that. Sarah Letts did reach out to me because she felt bad about cutting me off and wanted to hear my concerns, but I pretty much told her that as board members, we never talk privately with anybody, because that way our words get misconstrued. So what could potentially be, we could devote our July meeting, if they're willing to come and talk again beyond their community meetings. But another point was made about these buildings being out of character with the surrounding neighborhood. Well, the city has spent 10 years working on how we were going to expand housing without really changing the character of all of our neighborhoods. And we redid our whole zoning code. So all of our major transit corridors, Santa Monica, Wilshire, Lincoln, Pico, were designated mixed-use boulevard, which gave the developers rights to go up to 4 stories high, as long as they put a certain 20% affordable housing inside and ground floor retail. And that was the idea, was to kind of streamline, okay, this is where we're going to allow taller, higher buildings and a little bit more density. We also did a downtown community plan, where downtown we said, hey, you can go all the way up to 84 feet downtown. So essentially, I said this to somebody last summer, that from Lincoln West in 50 years, it's going to be 8-story buildings. So that's what's happening. And so these buildings, it's actually with them only being 4, 5, and 6 stories, it kind of falls within there. But another thing that happened was the state kind of came in because no other cities were being as proactive as Santa Monica and steamrolled everything and said, hey, as long as you give 10% affordable housing, we'll give you double density bonuses. And that's why we're suddenly seeing there's going to be 8-story buildings along the Wilshire Corridor and potentially Santa Monica, and actually even down here on Broadway and 20th. I believe there's one scheduled there for 8 or 12 stories. I can't even remember. And that's because the state, and we don't have a lot of control over that. We kind of got steamrolled. So with that being said, we've got a lot of people that want to talk. We were approaching the end of our hour that we were going to devote to this. I can go over an extra 20 minutes, but I only ask the commissioners in Gleam to be here for an hour. If they're willing to stay longer, that is up to them. But with that being said, I'd like our questions to kind of get a little more specific and not rehash something that somebody else has already said. Okay, so Mercedes, that being said, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I'm here. So my question, I don't think has been asked. What I want to find out is, like, who is it that's going to decide who goes in these buildings that have different mental conditions? Like, how are we going to know that a person who's like aggressive and overbearing isn't going to be right next door to a person who's an introvert and afraid to walk out the door? Who decides that kind of stuff?
So there's different, as Theresa pointed out, there's different kinds of housing within these 3 buildings. There's permanent supportive housing, there's deed restricted affordable housing, there's some housing designated for seniors and the disabled, there's some larger units for families. So the city maintains an affordable housing priority list, putting aside the permanent supportive housing, which is the housing for formerly homeless people. The people who are on that list, and there are priorities within it. For example, current Santa Monica residents have higher priorities than people who aren't Santa Monica residents, that sort of thing. People who have been evicted from their homes have higher priorities than other people. So there's a whole priority structure and there's a list. Except for the folks who are currently homeless, the people who are in these buildings will come off that list and they'll need to qualify for the units, depending on where they are on the list. With regard to the permanent supportive housing, the city does maintain sort of a separate, for lack of a better term, directory of people. We do try and keep a good listing of folks who are living on our streets and how we've engaged them and what their issues are, whether they have mental health issues, whether they have addiction issues, that sort of thing. And we will work with the County Department of Mental Health and others to determine who should go into that. And I'll just give you an example of how we recently did that. You may know that the Palms Motel on 14th Street was part of now the county's Pathway Home program, which is turning motels into temporary shelters while people are waiting for permanent housing. And they get supportive services there. So we, working with the county, evaluated the people who are now in that motel. The folks in that motel may be great candidates to move into this permanent supportive housing because they will have been getting services for a while. They will have, been housed for a while, but they are still technically homeless because they can't afford their own place to live. So, for example, they may come out of the Pathway Home program. They may come out of Samo Shell. They may come out of some other, we do have other facilities around us. So there will be an evaluation made about whether or not they are appropriate to put into this facility. But this is exactly the kind of facility that the people who are currently in the Pathway Home program would then be moved into. And that would be great because they will have been there for a couple of months. They'll have been getting services. They'll have been stabilized. The people concerned is the group providing supportive services there, so they'll know the people and be able to evaluate whether it makes sense to move them into this housing.
That sounds good. I hope it all works out.
All right. Thank you, Mercedes. Jay Johnson, you were next.
Yes, greetings, Gleam, I think it's critical for not only you, but for all the city council members to realize we're scared. We are scared, meaning that the neighbors and the businesses are scared of what's going on this particular project, a block from our house. And I want to ask you if you'd be open and agreeable to sponsoring amendments to the conditions of approval to address at least 3 areas, if not more. One is that the services that are talked about be either moved off-site, or that they are open only to the residents of the structure and not open to everybody in the complete region, for that matter. Secondly is the parking. What little we've learned is there were 23 on-site parking spaces. I don't know where they'll fit in seeing those overviews, but the critical thing is to underground the parking so that there's adequate parking much greater than 23 places for all those units. And lastly, the issue of enforcement of the rules and regulations of the project. That the history of the people concerned and the people and the Hollywood people has a very bad track record from all the news articles we've seen. And the issue of enforcement of the rules on site 24/7 is critical to the concerns of the neighbors and the residents. Would you be willing to propose and be involved in creating amendments to the conditions of approval for these projects? Thank you.
Let me just say, one is, it's my understanding the services will only be provided. This is not a service center where homeless people can come and get services. The services will be provided on site to the people who live in the buildings, much as they are at Step Up on Second, that sort of thing. We're not opening up a Sam O'Shell adjacent or annex or something like that. This is not going to be where people come to get services. The people who live there will get the services. There may and it says public hours. I don't know about that, because my understanding with permanent supportive housing, you're supporting the people who live in the building. 2, the parking, that's currently being negotiated. So there's nothing for council to do at this point. Staff is negotiating. There is it's going to be underground parking. It's just a question of how much underground parking. And as I said, the problem is HCHC cannot build publicly accessible. They can build for people who live in the units, but they can't build it for the nearby stores. The city would have to take $5 million out of its coffers to build that additional housing, and that's what they're talking about now. And I honestly, because they're exclusive negotiating agreements, it's going on, and we're not kept up to speed on the day-to-day developments. And then the third one you said was, I'm sorry.
Enforcement of the on-site rules and conflicts. For the acting out issues, the naked people, the mental health people running around the neighborhood, the on-site enforcement of what the house rules and the internal management of the building. That's been
well, I mean, that will be the people concerned's job.
But the problem is that people concerned in Hollywood and a number of their projects have a horrible track record, newspaper articles, all kinds of disaster stories. You need to use your influence, the prime influence on city council, to push for these things. We can't just sit back and let the negotiators around the table talk about it. They need to know pressure from you, from the city council people, of what we need. And the neighborhood is so worried about people running around the neighborhood doing all kinds of bizarre things that we need your influence to try and have enforcement of the rules on site of the situation.
We're not, I just want to make it clear, procedurally, we're not in a place where the city council is making decisions because they're negotiating. But as Theresa said, there are these meetings coming up. I mean, what I will promise you I will do is I will see if there's some way to increase the additional outreach so that people feel that they can express these things in these early stages, that it's not coming to council. There's nothing council members can do at this point in time because it's of where we are in the process, but there certainly can be community input. And if the 2 meetings that are scheduled for the 8th and the 10th of July are insufficient, then we should ask for additional community input.
I understood amendments to the conditions of approval can be made.
Well, no, there are no conditions of approval yet. They're still negotiating. That's why it's hard for us to intervene. It's sort of like saying, I want to amend a motion when there's no motion on the floor. There's no conditions of approval yet. It hasn't come back to council. But I think the better thing to do is, instead of waiting till it comes back to council in 2025, which, by the way, I will not be on the council, and then trying to sort of, chop into the cement, it's better to have the input now.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Stephanie. Stephanie, you are muted. And some people, I do mute people when there's background noise coming from your
microphone. I'm not here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, great. So I think there's a real misunderstanding from the city and the housing. This is a neighborhood that wants to help. It's just that we were not included in any of the negotiations. So when we found out about this, we thought, oh, this is really crazy. Then we started reaching out, speaking to each other. Neighbors attended the meeting. HCHC was really not helpful. Their outreach, their quote unquote outreach, is not great. Then researching some more, find out that HCHC is in 3 lawsuits. The Venice Dell project and 2 other projects. Now, they haven't listened to anything from the Venice community. They made no changes to their developments at all. So now you're telling me that HCHC has total control over all this and we have to negotiate with HCHC? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, HCHC is negotiating with the city. They're in what's called this exclusive negotiating
agreement. And can
agreement.
you guys listen to what we're saying is you're getting rid of 3 public parking lots, 3 lots, $200,000 a year in revenue. That's $1 for an hour. That's 200,000 hours of use. They are used parking lots by this neighborhood. People use them. So I don't understand, where is everyone supposed to park? Currently, HCHC is only going to provide 9 parking spots to the public on Euclid. They're not going to provide parking on the 14th Street lot or the 16th Street lot. That is all the businesses park there, all the residents park there. Now you're going to add residents. So you're going to have, let's see, Euclid, 65 apartments, 43 parking spaces. So not even all the residents in the building have parking. They're going to park on the street. There's already no parking on the street. 14th Street, 45 apartments, 43 parking spaces. There's not enough parking for their own residents. So this doesn't make any sense to me. It also doesn't make any sense to me that you put homeless wraparound services in a neighborhood with Lincoln Junior High 2 blocks away. You've got the PS1 school 2 blocks away. And I don't know if you read HCHC's proposal, but it's not only wraparound services. And in their first meeting with us, they're going to have a feeding program and mental health outreach. It was stated in person. And if you read the HCHC proposal to Santa Monica, it's in it. So how are we getting something wrong? I don't understand. It makes sense. If you would have spoken to us, we would have said, we looked at some of the other proposals. Bridge had a wonderful proposal for Euclid. It was for seniors and it included parking for the neighborhood. That makes a lot of sense. This is just common sense stuff. Yeah, we're talking about mentally ill people walking around, but you can't house every single one of them and have services to bring them into a residential neighborhood. There are parents who are upset. The neighborhood is upset. And what is going to happen to all the businesses here? I mean, they're going to go out of business. There's no way Monarca, Ulta, the pizza place, the boba place, they can't stay in business. Unleashed, how are people going to go pick up a 10-pound bag of dog food? What are they going to do that on their bike? I mean, this just doesn't make any sense. This is like, you got to make them have parking. We're totally for helping homeless people. We're totally for helping the problem, but this is crazy. I don't understand what the city is doing. It's just common sense.
I mean, all I can tell you is, as I discussed at the beginning, that the big impediment to building housing, both deed restricted affordable housing, which prevents people from becoming homeless, and permanent supportive housing, which addresses the needs of people, sadly, who are already living on our streets. One of the huge impediments is just the cost of land on the west side. And so that's why we've designated city land for the housing. And that is, you know, it wasn't like, let's pick on this neighborhood or that neighborhood. It's where do we have city-owned land? And these 3 lots were city-owned land. You know, I, in all honesty, because exclusive negotiating agreements are confidential between city staff and HCHC, you know, they're talking, but, you know, one of the requirements is that HCHC listen to the community. And I'm hearing that the community doesn't feel that they're being listened to, and that is something that we can address, you know, but I don't want to give people a false sense of hope that these projects aren't going to happen, or that they're going to get significantly smaller, or, you know, because we do have this obligation to the state to build a certain amount of deed restricted affordable housing, and the permanent supportive housing, you know, is part of that as well. And so we need to build this affordable housing, and the only way to get it built is on city land. But that doesn't mean that you should not feel heard. And so we will do what we can. You know, I will certainly pledge to do what I can to make sure that you feel heard.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Gleam. Arlene.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. First, I'm sorry that the police officers are gone, because I did want to thank them for their service. I walk a lot with my little dog around my own street, which is 20th Street, not personally, like by name, but they're always just really seem to be watching out for the good of the community. I live, as I said, I live on 20th Street. My father lives on Euclid Street, about 3 doors down from that parking lot that you're discussing, where there's going to be a homeless shelter. And I am very concerned about his safety. My father is almost 97 years old and can barely walk. And I spend a lot of time going over to his house, and I'm very aware of what's going on around there on Euclid Street. And I don't think the city is even aware of all that's going on over there. There's a homeless man that lives right behind my father's building. He puts his boxes up every night to sleep in, and he takes them down every morning. And he happens to be a very nice man. He doesn't seem to be mentally ill. He's offered to help open the gate, and he knows my dog and asks me when I'm going to walk him. And he's just a really nice man. I don't know why he's homeless, but I have seen him go into 2 vehicles that sit next to, I'm parked regularly next to La Monarca on Euclid Street. And the one looks like almost like a mobile home size vehicle. The other one is a brown van. And I see this homeless man that I know going in there in both those vehicles periodically. And I cannot figure out what those vehicles are doing or servicing, or I really have no idea. And I would like to know from the city, you know, who those vehicles are owned by and what they're doing. And like I said, the homeless man got to know, I see him going in and out of those vehicles. The big mobile home one I've seen driven by a woman on several occasions. And I'm thankful in a way for them, because a couple of times when it was heavy rains, I saw that man going into that mobile home one. So it was apparently giving him some shelter from the rain. But I don't know, those 2 vehicles are on that block daily.
So,
Arlene,
yeah,
sorry.
Arlene, like,
Those are homeless people. They also live in their vehicles. They've lived on this street for years, and they're all friends. So they're all very nice people and very supportive participants in the neighborhood. In fact, they're some of the only people that pick up their dog poop. They're very nice. They're all very nice, but I don't think they want housing. They're very good about living. They like living in their vans.
And those would have been very good questions for our neighborhood resource officers.
Definitely.
That's more the people that are going to be dealing with those people as opposed to our city. I don't think that really had a lot to do with the project. So
Well, I do think it has a lot to do with the project because you want to put people into the housing of these projects. And some of these people seem to be living in vehicles that are parked all the time. They come and go on the street. They're always there though. And also I'm wondering about that Cypress Equity Company is going to be taking over, like it seems like almost all of Wilshire Boulevard. And doesn't seem like the city is considering the impact of all of that building that's coming in with Cypress Equity, with what you're doing. And why have you selected two streets back to back, Euclid and 14th, that are going to have this low cost and low income, I don't know what you're calling it, back to back on 2 blocks. So why, you've got 20 blocks of Santa Monica to build on.
Arlene, we are rapidly coming out of time, and that issue has been addressed multiple times already. Why these lots were chosen? These are lots that the city owns. They went through and decided where they had them. So we're not the only ones. We're just the ones that got started. Others have been started. So those homeless people will have the right to apply for some of the housing when it becomes available. So Michael, thank you for being patient. You're up.
Yeah, nevertheless, this does account for a massive concentration in one particular neighborhood within 2 blocks. The Pico neighborhood, it's much more distributed throughout the neighborhood there. That is a big issue for us who live very close to this. The homeless / supportive housing is a very, we are very frightened of it. It is a great concern, and we really want it not to be here. I was at the outreach presentation that was at the St. Anne's Church a few weeks ago, and that may have been the same one that Dima Vilovic was at. But it very much was presented as a done deal. It seemed like they didn't want to hear our comments. So Gleam, when you say we should have our comments be heard, I mean, where do they go? You said the city council is out of this. It's being negotiated elsewhere. I mean, where does our activism and our input go?
Well, 2 things. And one is, I believe at the outreach meetings, there should be city folks there as well. If there aren't, we can ask them to come.
They were there, but they did nothing to make the community feel like we were being heard.
Well, I mean, and what I can promise you I will do is I will say the community's not feeling that it's being heard, and say that to our city manager, which is what I'm empowered to do under the charter. And then he will talk to the folks at HCHC, and we can see if there's a better mechanism for making sure people's voices are heard. But as I said, we are obligated to build this housing. These sites were selected because they were city-owned properties. And I think as Commissioner Marasco pointed out, we obviously, one of the things we also hear throughout the community is that we have people who are living on our streets. And the way we're going to get people from living on our streets is to get them homes. I want to say this, and I know the last time I mentioned Step Up on Second, it was like, oh, they're getting sued or something like that. I'm not sure, but I do want to say, if you've been to a step, if you've been to a Step Up on Second building, there are not homeless people milling around them. There are not, you know, you wouldn't know they were different than any other apartment building. They have on-site counselors who live at the facility. They're not, so there's somebody always there. You know, I've been through all of the ones in downtown and met with the people.
We have heard you say this already tonight. My question was just, how can we make our voice heard?
Well, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Marasco and go to these meetings. And of course, what I do want, well, and I guess it's one of those things where we will try and maybe see if there's a meet. I don't know if it's the, you know, when you say you haven't been heard, if what you're asking for is fewer units, what I'm trying to tell you is that's not going to happen. We have promised that a certain level of housing will be built on these things and these lots. And so if you say, I don't want them to be 6 stories or 4 stories, I want them to be 2 stories, that's going to be very difficult because that's not going to get us to the numbers we need to meet in the housing element. If you have concerns, for example, about security, I would raise those because there are ways, you know, that security can be addressed. And my guess is HCHC, you know, will have thought about them. And if they give you answers you don't like, you can continue to press. So things like security, things like offering services to people who are off-site, and whether or not that will be, you know, attracting people into the neighborhood. Those are the sorts of things that I think they should be willing to listen to. And how are they going to, you know, make people feel safe is obviously a key provision of that.
When you say the number of units, that's a done deal. That deal happened, as far as we're concerned, happened entirely behind closed doors. The community was not engaged.
It didn't happen behind closed doors. We had so many hearings on the housing element. We had to send the housing element 3 times up to Sacramento before we got it approved.
I'm not talking about the housing element. I'm talking about these particular projects and your
Yes, but these particular projects are part of the commitment we made in the housing element.
Well, it's not the same thing exactly. It flows from it, but it's not the same thing. In terms of the number of units and the size of the buildings, one of the comments that was made at the St. Anne's meeting was, why do all of the supportive housing units have to be 1 bedrooms? There are no studios. If the buildings could be smaller, if there were smaller units, we were told that this is for single people. There's not, it's the majority of single people. Why do they all need to get 1 bedroom units? If there were, if most of those units could become studios, the building could become smaller and lower. The size of these buildings is a great concern for us. These projects are not on the Wilshire Boulevard. They're all on the side streets. And they're all adjacent, without exception, to buildings that are no taller than 2 stories. And this is going to be a massive scale adjacency issue for us.
I suspect the buildings are going to stay close to the size they are now. I think one of the reasons there are 1 bedrooms is because this is supposed to be housing for permanent people. I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but even single people, I think, like to have bedrooms.
Well, they like to, but if it's being provided by the public, does that mean that they should have just what they want, as opposed to what the city is able to afford for them, and what the neighborhood can?
Okay. All right, Michael, you've made the point very clear. I want to say, I fucking hate all the SROs the city has already allowed to be built. So when I'm hearing this, it kind of makes me upset that you're saying that these people don't deserve a 1-bedroom apartment. So I'm going to hold off on that because I see Theresa is holding her hand up very avidly, wanting to address this issue. So please, Theresa, take it away.
First of all, it's not just the city providing this housing. It is a myth that the housing is free. It is not free. It is subsidized. So they are actual tenants of these units. And yes, I can speak from my own experience as a person who is low income, you know, to have room to relax and feel like you live in a home is living in a trauma-informed environment. And that is what a lot of these 100% affordable developers are supposed to be working towards. And if you are working from a trauma-informed perspective, people who have trauma, who are acting out in the streets, when they get into housing, it literally transforms their lives. I think it's going to take a very long time for people to understand that what you see on the streets isn't really a clear picture or the reality of the general population of people who are unhoused. I was unhoused in the city of Santa Monica for a whole year, me and my son living in his truck during the pandemic. So I got to meet a lot of the people that were on the street, and the majority of them weren't people who were just out of their minds or smoking meth. In fact, I've never even seen anyone smoking meth on the street. Not to say that they don't do it, but I've never myself witnessed it. But I think, you know, and also part of the problem in Santa Monica is there are too many of these micro units. And my understanding is they're having a hard time filling those micro units. People that are on the below market housing wait list are passing up those units. Yes, if they're going to be paying rent, they should have a choice about where they're going to live. And I guess that's going to be an unpopular thing that I'm saying, but you know, they're regular tenants, just like anybody else, regardless of what their problems are. There are people who are currently housed now, who are using drugs in their homes right now, but you don't notice this because they're inside doing it. There are people who have mental health issues who are housed now, but it's not a problem for the general public because they're in their house with their problems. So I think it's going to take kind of switching the mindset. What I think is most important, and I'll say this one last time, that you all ask for like a town hall meeting and that you ask for robust community engagement with HCHC, and this input has to be incorporated into their final proposal to city council. So whatever your concerns are as a community, that's actually going to become a part of the record. So that is my final, you know, input that I have to say about these projects. You know, Councilmember Davis is correct that the housing element was already created. And yes, there was a lot of community engagement at that time. But to be fair, that these projects were pushed through really, really fast. And so unless you're going to planning commission meetings, you're not going to know what's going on. Unless you're like regularly going to the planning division and planning commission website and reviewing all the documents, these projects are going very, very fast. So I would say just be active and involved and make sure that the community's input is incorporated into the record.
I need to clarify my comment about the studio units. I was referring only to the supportive housing. And so I do not, that comment does not apply to the other projects. It's just the supportive housing.
I understand that, Michael.
And so therefore, excuse me, Andy, and therefore, I do have a question though. Aren't those people meant to be? How long are they kind of permanently in this project, or are these people that you kind of accommodating for a certain amount of time so that they can get on their feet and move elsewhere? So
No,
is it?
it's permanent. It's called permanent supportive housing. This is where these people are going to live. And Teresa's absolutely right. If you look at the folks who live in permanent supportive housing in other buildings throughout the city, many of them are employed with housing and with counseling. They are able to maintain jobs. They are employed. They receive housing vouchers from the government that allow them to live there. But these are not people that we are, giving housing to. These will be their homes. And they have a sense of house. When you meet with these folks and they talk about, this is my place and I want to take care of it and I want it to be beautiful and I want, my neighbors to behave and that sort of thing. They have no different needs or wants than anybody. I live in a multifamily housing. I want my neighbors to be good too. This is meant to be permanent housing for these folks.
So their tenancies are on average are not likely to be any shorter than in the other buildings.
No, as pointed out by HCHC, these people will be signing a lease. It's a 1-year lease. And then it's just like everybody else. You switch to generally a month to month, and you have to give a 30-day notice to move out, and the owner has to give you a 30-day notice to change the terms of the lease.
That's applicable to the supportive housing as well.
It's up to the owner to decide whether or not they make them sign an annual lease every year. That is also allowed by state law. So that's up to the developer as to how that works. But as Gleam said, this is permanent. It's supportive housing. If they feel like they're ready to move on and they find a better situation, they leave and it becomes available for someone else. So we are approaching, I have like 5 minutes left before I need to switch to board business. So we may not get to everybody's questions here because we've been flogging a lot of horses. So Lisa, I appreciate your patience. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. And I think a lot of people have asked some of the questions that I, wanted to ask. So I'll kind of skip over those. Again, just wanted to just make sure, Gleam, we are worried about the supportive housing. We understand the need for the affordable housing. We understand the state's requirement. So again, it's really the safety. And it feels like a lot of the comments have been, well, we need to be involved. I think that's what we're doing in terms of making sure the neighbors are aware. So can you let us know what is the next step in this process? Because if there is an open, community meeting in July, and we are saying, well, we believe we need more meetings, we have more questions. What was the next step for the city council to then formally enter into the agreement with HCHC?
So what will happen is HCHC is out there doing these meetings. They will negotiate with city staff under the exclusive negotiating agreement. And then probably in 2025, the agreement with HCHC will come back to council. That would be my guess. When in 2025, I'm not quite sure. My guess would be first half of 2025.
So to clarify, are you saying that the agreement with HCHC will not be formalized until 2025?
That's kind of my guess. I doubt it'll, we're already into June, and they're still on their listening, tour, if you will, and we may try and see what we can do to expand that listening tour. And then they will go with the city and they'll be negotiating, pursuant to this exclusive negotiating agreement, And so given with the holidays and, because once we get into November and then we have elections and December, we have Christmas. And so I think my guess is it'll come back sometime in 2025 for council approval. That's my best guess. And I would say again, first half, it could be as You know, I doubt it'll be January, and I say that only because we'll have a relatively new council, I suspect, at that time. I mean, I know I'm not running, so there'll be at least one new council member. And so I think they may want to let before something like this comes up, they may want to let them sort of get their sea legs. So it could be perhaps as early as February, but maybe later, late spring. It's just hard to know because I don't know how the negotiations are going to go.
Okay, and I think also, what I'm hearing it saying we entered into a agreement to negotiate with HCHC. So is this an agreement that can be reversed? And if we decide, well, actually, we might need to change developers, or we might need to change service providers, is that actually still an option?
Probably not. Because it was a request for proposal process. So once you go through that process, the process says whoever scores the highest wins the bid, so to speak. And the only way you can change that is to go back and begin all over again. So you'd have to go out with a whole new RFP, that sort of thing, which would, of course, and these things, it takes months to write an RFP, although we obviously already have one, and then you have to give people time to respond. So I think it's unlikely that you'll see a change of providers, unless they cannot come to any sort of agreement during the time this exclusive negotiating agreement is active. If at the end of it, they both throw up their hands, the city and HCHC, and they say, there's no way we can have a meeting of the minds, then we would have to go back and sort of start over. But that's only if the negotiations break down, which I think is highly unlikely.
So as of right now, though, it's an irrevocable offer with HCHC?
It's not an offer, it's what's called an exclusive negotiating agreement, meaning we will only negotiate with HCHC. Either we will negotiate till we get to agreement, or we'll negotiate to the point when there can be no agreement.
Okay. And I think also too, we are all concerned and we've expressed that. But a lot of it seems to be our concerns are being put on HCHC to address, or the people's concern. And I think really we're also asking for our, city, leaders to help us get this message out, and also to make sure everybody, is aware that we are scared. And I don't think right now any of our concerns are really being addressed, of how to make sure that the community is going to stay safe and the impact to the businesses. So I was also wondering, have there been any studies on what the impact will be to traffic, to the businesses, to families, the families that are now going to be living next to the supportive housing, not the affordable housing, but the supportive housing? What are any studies on if this is going to be a mixed use? So the supportive housing for formerly unhoused, they might have mental, issues that they're getting treated for, next to a single mom with a couple kids. How does that work? Because what we've heard is then, it doesn't necessarily, they're not in harmony. So if we're trying to say, okay, for, a single mom who is, trying to, support her kids, to have to live next to somebody who's mentally ill, it doesn't seem fair to the person to this family.
Oh, I mean, and Theresa or someone may have a better recollection. It's not going to be, the permanent supportive housing is not sprinkled throughout. It is sort of separated because, for that very reason, because we understand that people who are formerly experiencing homelessness, Theresa rightly points out, whether they're drug addicted or have mental health issues, they have had trauma inflicted on them, and they need services to get around that trauma. So you're not going to have a single mom with a kid living next door to someone who's formerly homeless. They're going to be in one of the buildings, and that's where the services are going to be, and the affordable housing will be elsewhere, among the 3 lots. So I don't think that's an issue. In terms of studies, I will tell you, under state law, 100% affordable housing projects do not require any environmental review or traffic studies or anything like that. And in fact, we could not impose that on them, because then HCD, the state, would view that as a constraint on housing, and we would get into trouble. You know, and I do want to emphasize, I know people always say, well, why don't you fight them? There have been probably close to 100 lawsuits now filed against HCD in connection with housing requirements, the RHNA numbers generally, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers generally. They have all, with one exception, lost. And the one exception that lost had to do with the fact that there was a technical issue that somehow in state law exempted them from something, and I'm not really sure what it was. That this is state mandated. The state has basically, to a large extent, you know, taken over the issue of housing, because when they didn't have control of housing, no affordable housing was getting built in most of the state. And so now it's become a matter of state concern. And, you know, so there aren't going to be any studies about traffic per se or environmental quality, because it's 100% affordable housing. So they're not required to do that.
Okay. Thank you for that.
All right, thank you, everyone, for all the questions and concerns. Mouse, I really...
This isn't about, it's a question about tomorrow, about city services. Is everything closed, including street sweeping and not trash pickup tomorrow? Just want to make sure, because Juneteenth is a new holiday for Santa Monica. So can you confirm?
I know city offices will be closed. I think it's effectively, yeah, I don't want to make a promise. I don't think there's street sweeping tomorrow, but it's probably on the city's website. But yeah, it's a national holiday. I'm in federal court and trial right now. We get tomorrow off because it's a federal holiday too. So yeah, it's you know, there won't be any of the normal services. It's like a regular holiday, like Memorial Day or Labor Day. So there won't be trash pickup or any of that.
Yeah, but trash pickup will be delayed one day.
Right. But there won't be trash pickup tomorrow. It'll just be pushed back till Thursday.
Right.
All right, we're going to end it on that public service note. Now, I have been kind of following in the chat, and a lot of people are like, well, how can we get our advices sent out to the city? Well, if you paid attention, I typed David White's email address into the chat. He is our city manager. Send your concerns to him. As both Gleam and Theresa have pointed out, if you go to the website for the development and click on the Contact Us button, any comment that you submit becomes part of the public record. This is how you get your concerns expressed to the city who is negotiating. They have to submit all those. They also have to submit all the records and all the notes that they took from all the meetings that they are holding. So, and I can try if they are willing, and my board is willing, we can devote our July meeting, which would be the third Tuesday in July, so it's much further into the month, to a meeting to count as another community meeting for them. So I can push for that. But I kind of need to, I think we should wrap this up on this point. And I want to thank you, Gleam, very much. You've been very gracious to come and spend an hour and a half with us. And Theresa as well. It was very good to see you again. I believe you've joined us before, right? Yeah, so I appreciate you taking your time out of a weeknight to join us and provide some very good and very informative debate about this whole process. So yeah,
Andy,
yes.
can you email this to us, because I don't know how to find the minutes of the meeting on the internet.
There is not going to be a record. I am recording this meeting. I have not yet come up with a way really to functionally get that out there. And while I've got the forum, let me just point out, Mid-City Neighbors has 2 board positions open that we can appoint people to. We have a platform. Our board is taxed and overworked, and a lot of it falls down to me to send announcements out, and I just don't have time because I have a new full-time job. So if there are people out there that want to be involved, you don't even need to be a board member to assist us. We can create a committee, and you can help us get information out to at least our list and help us to expand and grow. We took some serious setbacks with the pandemic. There were concerns addressed by members about how are we supporting businesses? Delete your Amazon account. That was killing our businesses before the pandemic. They need you to go out to their brick and mortar streets, to their stores and purchase. So I get it. It gets back to the parking, but I will not end this note on that. And if Gleam and Theresa have not left us yet, thanks again. So thank you all for sticking around. We're trying to do quick board business. There's not an awful lot to discuss. The primary thing to be discussed normally would be the approval of our minutes. Let me real quick, I do have it all ready to drop into the chat for any who are desiring to see our minutes, download our minutes from our last meeting. It is in the chat now. Does the board have any discussion on the minutes from our last meeting? No discussion. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Make the motion.
And Stacy has seconded. Board members, raise your hands. And the only one I can't see is Ellen. All right, looks like it passed. We might have lost Ellen already.
I'm still here, but my camera doesn't work.
Oh, there it is. Okay. And William has joined us. Oh, I didn't see you earlier, William. Good.
Been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, good to know because I actually searched in the group. Maybe I searched for Hamilton instead of just William. But up next is our treasurer's report. Yes. And you are muted, William.
Can we put this off till?
Yes, yes. For those who don't know, William was recently appointed treasurer, and we are sorting out the quirks and differences. So that sounded like a motion by the treasurer to delay the treasurer's report until our next meeting. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded. So all in favor? And that's, yep, unanimous. All right, then the only other thing then would be what is coming up, and that would be Make Music Day. Mouse, do you want to give a little information on what's going on this Friday?
Yeah, we're hosting our, I guess, third annual post-COVID at 26 and Broadway, the Colorado Center Park. Make Music Day, 4 to 8. It's open to the public. You don't need to be a member, but if you are a member, you get a raffle ticket. And we have some wonderful raffles to raffle off. We have different musical acts. Not sure if any council person, I know the mayor's not coming. I ran into him the other day. He said he will not be here. It's just a fun community event that is once a year, usually on solstice, but solstice this year is a day early. Make Music Day falls on the same day every year around the globe, June 21st. And it's one of our only community events that Mid-City neighbors can actually give back to the community and host and, you know, hopefully rally some new memberships and be part of the community more. That's my whole position on this board, is to really try to support small businesses and advocate and try to get people, if they don't know if a business exists, then I'm able to kind of get it out there and help these small businesses before they go under because rent's so high and they're not being supported by the community. So my goal really is to try to build community awareness with, you know, these type of mixers. And Make Music Day, I actually have a new cafe coming in and sampling coffee and a pastry, and they're called Fig and Bean, and they're located at 15th and Broadway. If you haven't heard of them, their food is unbelievably, incredibly delicious. And they're a new business starting out. So I'm happy to have them at our event, engaging with the community. And hopefully you guys will all come out. Bring a blanket, a chair, and just be prepared to have a good time. I'll re-put the flyer back in chat. I don't know if any of you were here in the beginning when I did that. And then we're going to be sending out another email Thursday, kind of detailing more about the event. But please, please, please come out and support, support your community.
And what I noticed, a couple of people are saying they'd like to be involved, and how can you do that? Well, step one, come over Friday night and introduce yourself to us. We're all going to be there. And I'll be emceeing from the stage, so it'll be very obvious. Come up and introduce yourself, and we can get started on talking about that. Yep, and so Make Music Day, yes, as Mouse mentioned, it's an annual celebration around the world of the longest day of the year. It's supposed to be about providing free music and entertainment to people. The city has helped us with funding for this over the years, and it was actually Phil Brock who got the city to stop spending a lot of money on a thing down at the pier for all the tourists, and instead give that money out to the various neighborhood organizations that are willing to put something together. That happened about 10 years ago. The first one was 2014. So without the pandemic, this would be our 10th annual one. So Laura Lee.
Oh, hi again. I just was wondering, is the Mid-City Board going to be able to have an opinion on whether we can send this petition out to your membership?
I knew that. I'm looking at my agenda and I'm looking at everything else in all my notes, and going, there was something else. So,
well, that's something we'll do in our next meeting, right? In 2 weeks?
Well, no. So yeah, we could decide now. So what the request is from the various neighbors who are living in this area, they have a petition going, and they're merely asking if we would be comfortable sending that petition out to our mailing list. And it's not us necessarily taking a position one way or the other. This is merely us deciding that we will send this out for the neighbors that are concerned about this project. Is there board discussion on this?
Well, it would have been nice to do that in private, to talk about it amongst ourselves.
No, first of all, I'd like to read it.
We need time to read it and understand it. We're not saying no. I'm not saying no. I just need to know.
I would be very happy to read it and talk to Laura Lee. I think that's her name, in case we have any questions. And then we have our executive meeting coming up. I mean, I'm okay with sending something out if we like what it says, and if we can talk anything out with the people who are putting it out. I mean, we could send it out. We can send it to the other neighborhood organizations. We could bring it up at our neighborhood council meeting when we meet with other people. We could bring it up to David Martin when we talk to David Martin at our meeting that we have once a month with David Martin. I mean, we could very well do that. I just want to know what it says. And
so Ellen, I'm happy to, I can send it to Andrew. I have his, I think I have his email. And the text in the chat has been the link to it. It's on change.org. It really just echoes most of what we've said tonight. And there's nothing, I don't think you'll find anything surprising, but yeah, that's great that you guys are open to it. I would just ask you to try to expedite it to really help our cause.
Let me jump in, because we can vote on things in a non-public forum. We do sometimes vote on things as a board in our executive committee meetings. And if we decide to do that, then we will send it out. We have that meeting 2 weeks from today. If we do, then it will go out immediately after that. So that would even possibly put it before their next community meetings, because that'll be the first week of July is when we'll have that board meeting. So that would be before their next meeting. So and also, where was I going with that?
A lot to read.
Oh, instead of sending something to me, better to send it to the info@midcityneighbors.org, because Mouse is very good about forwarding anything that comes into that forum to the rest of the board. So that's the fastest and the best way to get it to all of the board members. And we're trying to get people used to using that so that as board members come and go, then it doesn't just go into a vacant box somewhere. Lisa, did you have another question?
Just to kind of to continue on with what Laura Lee was asking. I think also we understand that you're saying you can't take a position on this, but really the big part of this is also just informing all of the neighbors, all of the residents on the street. Because as we're finding, a lot of people are not aware of this. So if HCHC and City Council is telling us, well, the best way is to get involved, but there are a lot of people who aren't aware of exactly what's going on. So that's really of just dispersing information, because some people we know we have differing opinions on how to help formerly unhoused, but at least we should have everybody engaged and participating in order to, those of us who love this neighborhood.
Okay.
So that is a big
that
thing.
is something that I did bring up at that was one of the few comments that I got out, is that Mid-City Neighbors sent out mailers to every address in our territory for a number of years in a row as a way to get members, so that we could build a list of people and have a community and a members. And yet a lot of the people at that meeting had never heard of us. So we're working on what our next phase or way to reach out to the neighborhood would be. And that is one of the points that Mouse is making, is that we're trying to do some community events to get our word out there so that people know we exist. Now, one other method you have is to personally draw up some flyers, make them so you can cut an 8.5 and 11 in half, and you get a whole bunch printed cheaply, and you can go flyer the neighborhood yourself by putting, roll it up and stick it between the doorknob and the door frame. That way you're not.
That is currently happening. It's just, I think this call demonstrated there are a lot of people who are, upset or concerned about what's going on. So really, we just want to make sure that the neighbors are aware, some of those who do not know, and also that, City Council, if they're saying get everybody engaged, this is one way to get everybody engaged. I would also say there is a bit of time sensitivity to this, given that HCHC has already scheduled their next public meeting for, early July. So again, just thank you for, having this on this really being the agenda today. But, there's a lot of us, this impacts our life. This is going to impact our daily, our daily life here in this neighborhood. And we just want to make sure that we're getting heard and that we have an opportunity to really make sure that, we're at the table. And that was partly why we were asking for this request.
Yeah, and let me
could you make a motion to support us if you read it by tomorrow and don't have any questions, or call me with questions, because we are in a time sensitive situation here.
I'll read it on Saturday. My week is slammed for this event, but Saturday I'll read it and then I'll shoot my thoughts. Actually, we can discuss it on Friday too if we have some downtime. So I don't know if this is allowed if you're able to make the event, but why don't you print out some information and print out the petition and come to this event? It's a community event focused on Mid-City.
I've been to the event many times. It's a great event, but I don't know that our people, after we've been canvassing for weeks, will make it there. We'll do our best.
It doesn't have to be that neighborhood. This is not only affecting your neighborhood, but the surrounding streets as well too.
Yeah. And again, our territory is from Lincoln to Centinela, Colorado to Wilshire. So I know this event is over here in Colorado Center Park, but that's because that's the park we have.
That's
why we put it on there. right?
That's not what I was saying.
I know you think it's only gonna draw people from
No,
downtown.
that's not what I'm saying. That
Okay,
isn't,
well-
that is, I'm saying we're.
I'm just giving you an alternative. If
That's
you
a
guys
great-
are on a crunch, then you gotta do some legwork
And
and
I'll-
maybe meet some local neighbors that are here that are gonna be from your neighborhood that will come to the event, because our email database focuses primarily on mid-city folks who live here.
You know what, we totally understand who you are. I appreciate your offer to help. We'll do whatever we can to expedite it. If we can find someone to go to the Make Music event, we will. But we have been walking the streets for 3 weeks. So please, what we're hoping is that your mailing list can help us get news to people that it concerns all over the city. So thank you.
And we are also concerned with the other neighborhood groups, just again, to make them aware of what's happening. So when it is their time to have the affordable housing in their neighborhood, they're not put in the position that we're in, where the RFP has already been, moved forward, and we're now trying to play catch up. So just making sure that all of our other neighborhoods are also aware that, hey, we need to start planning for this.
Let me tell you, they are aware, as Ellen pointed out earlier, we meet as once a month, all the neighborhood leaders get together and meet once a month and discuss these things. So these are the people that have been involved for the last decade and know about all this stuff that was coming down the pipeline. So Stacy, as a board member, I'm going to let you jump over Michael. You have a comment.
I do. I read the petition. I would move to support this letter and ask for a second. The only change I would ask be made is that it's changed from, you change one word, because when you say mid-city neighbors, it's very important that it read that it's not all mid-city neighbors that are making this request. But other than that, I would move to approve the letter at this meeting.
Fantastic. I'm sure we could change that word.
Yeah, okay, I'll second it. I just read it and it seemed fine. And it is a good idea. Maybe if someone could even just drop off on Friday some of the petitions that you want signed, and we could actually put it on our table.
We're pretty advanced. We even have a QR code. Thank you both so very much.
Could you?
I will say that.
Can you do me a favor and post it in the chat again, so I'm not scrolling looking for it? So it's right at the bottom.
I just emailed it to everyone. I forwarded it already.
I don't have my emails open, please.
Thank you. So the wording is.
I just posted.
Okay, thank you.
Emma.
We, the residents of mid Wilshire. So, but what you're talking about, all of those properties that are listed are in mid-city. Is that correct?
The 3, yes.
No, there's one on the other side.
One is slightly over Wilshire Boulevard. So
Yeah,
it's
but
actually
we do get just the north side. So one of them is 2 properties north of
Okay.
Wilshire, technically outside our territory.
You're talking about the 16th Street one then.
Technically
So-
Wilmar.
Well,
But
the
that's mid Wilshire. It says mid Wilshire, doesn't it?
Right.
It does,
It
yes.
does. It says mid Wilshire, so that's what I was saying. So, I would just, the only word I would delete from it is we, comma, residents of mid Wilshire, so that it doesn't sound like, it's all of the residents. And that would be, and so I certainly support the letter.
It's a slight semantic change, but it makes a very big difference.
Right.
So
right,
just to remove the word the.
right.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
are mid Wilshire residents, but when you say the, it makes it sound like you're all of them, and
We're speaking
you
for
are
everybody, yes.
not. So,
Thank
Michael, thank you for your patience. Oh, well, there's a
You have
motion
to-
on the floor. We have been discussing, and it's got a second, and we've been discussing it. So now I would take a vote of the board. Just by hand vote, if you support sending it ASAP.
I have to raise my hand. Wait a minute.
Well, you can say yes, Ellen.
I say yes.
You
Yeah. okay.
seconded the motion, so Daniel?
I'd actually prefer to study it and think about it a little bit myself.
So you're abstaining, or is that a no vote?
No, it's a no vote for right now.
Okay.
I like to actually think about it, and mull about it for a little bit.
Mouse.
I already said I wanted to read it and I'll get back to it after Saturday. This is, it feels like a forcement now, and that I feel resistant to that, and I need my own time to read it and
Well,
understand
let me-
it.
It's
And
just a vote.
So
Let me make a friendly
exactly, so the
amendment.
vote, I can't vote without reading it.
Let me make a friendly amendment. How about that? This motion is on the floor, and once we've had a chance to read it, we will vote within 1 week's time.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Is that a friendly amendment, Stacy?
Sure.
No,
If-
not Daniel,
if-
Stacy.
If it gets to a pass doing that, yes, but I would definitely make sure that we stay within that time constraint. If that is the time constraint that works for Laura Lee and what her needs are.
Look, I understand where everybody's very busy, so the soonest you can do it, is great. I mean, we'll take next week. If you could make it Monday, it'd be even better.
Then I accept the friendly amendment. Thank you, Andy.
Okay. With that friendly amendment, then Mouse and Daniel, are you willing to say yes?
Yes.
Okay, so we will discuss it. We will have a result within a week.
Yeah.
We'll let you know. So that then does pass.
Did you poll everyone? Did William vote?
Yeah, William, did you? I know I mute you because but he raised his hand. See, I was watching.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
Jen here? No.
Thanks, everybody.
And then Michael, thank you for being patient.
Yeah, just, the petition, I think it's very reasoned, and I really do hope that you will vote to allow it to be distributed. But I just ask that either way, or should you not, that what you would put out to us is just what your decision was, because those of us not on the board, we don't have another way of knowing.
The way you
Here's
will
the beauty
know.
of that. Half of the board, more than half of the majority is voting yes for it. Only 2 of us want to read it. That's all. So even if we said no, it still gets the majority of the vote. So you already got that. I need time to read it.
Yeah.
That's all.
And Michael, you will know, because as soon as we vote as a board to send it, we will be sending it to everybody on the mailing list. And you get our emails.
So it's a foregone conclusion that it will be distributed.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Seems like it, yes, but the board, a couple of my board members would like to have the time to read it so that they can feel confident in what they're saying. But yes,
again,
it's pretty
Andrew,
much
if
a foregone conclusion. We're just trying to have a little formality about it.
I'm just.
If anyone has any other concerns, please get my information from Andrew, and we can make some, edits if,
Are we sending out a pre-letter with it, Andy, or making comments about it before, or what exactly are we
Well,
sending?
we can discuss that when we, email each other and decide this. We'll have an email vote. And if we have discussion items or concerns or anything we want them to change, we will reach out to Laura Lee and see if they're amenable to that. And like, again, we'd like to get this resolved within a week, so that then, and we will decide when we're discussing this, are we going to say something about it, or are we going to basically say, these people have decided to submit a petition about the projects, the affordable housing projects going up in Mid-Wilshire. And we will just say, read the information for yourself. And
Yeah, I think we should say, I think the letter should say, we had a presentation on, tonight, blah, 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 blah. And at their request, we are sending this information out to you.
Yeah, it'll be
And
something.
did you film this?
Yes, I do have this recorded, but
Okay,
again,
so you could say, put on there, if you'd like to see our meeting where we discussion was gone, go to our website and blah, 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 blah.
well, we're not posting these anywhere right now, and that's one of the problems, is our website will not support posting these. So yes, I have these recordings, and when we get a great website going, bam, we can dump them on there. But for now, that's just not happening. So
not happening. Okay.
So Michael, we're at the end of the meeting. If you had something last to say. You're muted and
Okay.
I can't unmute you. Well, and he dropped.
Andy, can you stay on for 2 minutes after? I want to discuss Friday briefly, only like 2 minutes.
Yeah, I can. But I will tell you that my plans for tomorrow changed and I will not be driving to Anaheim. So if you want to just.
Oh, well, tomorrow is also no street sweeping, so I don't need to move my car.
But I'm saying we could
But
powwow
let's talk
tomorrow.
about that. Yeah, can we just give me just 2 minutes?
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, what I'm going to do is say it is 9:03 p.m.
Mouse, what, I was gonna say, Mouse, what time do you want me there Friday?
Can I call you tomorrow?
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to, it's 9:03 p.m. I'm ending this meeting. I'm stopping the recording. Thank you all very much for coming
Okay,
and we
thank you.
appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.